So today we're going to talk about scaling a tech company, and we're going to do that with Fabien Guillarm. Hi, Fabien.
Hello.
So scaling a company, a tech company, a digital exploration company, an innovation services company, a company that's pretty interesting because it's not a startup, it's already a scale-up. You've been starting the business a few years ago already. And it's also an interesting business because it's an international one. The team is partly French, happens to good people, right? And also partly very international because you have offices in Japan, offices in LA, and in the middle offices in France as well. So an innovative enterprise. The question for today is, what are the challenges, the main challenges when you're an entrepreneur? And also we're going to use the discussion to see how we work, and how you work with this on the scaling side and on the doing something different side. First question, what is the core topic of Gimbal Cube?
So we are specialists in what we call immersive experience, and more precisely XR. So it's a short term for extended reality. And usually when we discuss this topic, the definition is a bit blurry for people. So what I like to use as a definition is on the continuum. If you take on one side the reality, so what you can see with your own eyes, and on the other side of the continuum, the virtual reality, completely immersive environment, all in between these two sides, you will have different type of reality. So you have AR, so augmented realities, it's typical what you can see in Instagram filter, where you have like bunny ears or on your head. And then if you go further into adding more layers and more understanding of our space, you start to go into mixed reality, where the digital layer is placed according to your environment. So something can be on the wall, on the floor, and it knows the space.
That also includes the big goggles that people tend to play with, right?
Yes, like this. So yeah, these devices will capture the environment through sensors and replay it in the lenses, in the screens that are inside. And yes, this is typical what we say mixed reality headsets, which allows to completely immerse yourself in mixed reality environment, so both your space and the virtual one at the same time.
Technically, what would be the use cases? Company, businesses, are they big, are they small? How do they use those technologies?
If we look at the history of these technologies, it was first used into heavy industries, so manufacturing of automobile, airplanes, all these big industry, because what they are producing is so expensive, it takes so long to create, then doing things virtually really helps them test many times. It helps them see the invisible. It helps them iterate and simulate a lot of use case. Instead of doing them in reality, we can do them in virtual reality. So as these technologies improved and the miniaturization of the devices went better and better, these devices were also becoming more of a personal usage. So for example, latest headset from Meta, which is not that expensive, is really used as a gaming device, as a fitness device, or as a personal device for everyone to use.
So there is a very industrial and very functional and very technical use case. There is a very personal use case, as you just mentioned. But you've also been installing, building installations basically in shopping malls, in museums, in shops, in a variety of places. What's the importance of this for the location-based entertainment businesses?
LBE, so location-based entertainment, as you said, is spaces, public spaces, where people go with the expectation of being entertained. So having this kind of technologies that allow the blend between a physical space and a virtual one is really on point for them, because it allows us to use the existing space. So we don't have to like build a completely new rooms or new space. We can use what already exists and augment it with a digital layer of information and pure entertainment, or for museum it could be a virtual visit. There is a good match between this technology and what the customers are expecting.
So the point in the end is to increase foot traffic for those locations, right? It's a question of saying, maybe in a shopping mall, we can build screens where people can just use their fingers to figure out where they are. Maybe it's a question of building a bike in front of a large screen so people are going to play and win something. Maybe it's a question of putting a giant wells in the middle of a museum. Maybe it's a question of using the same kind of technology to do a theme park kind of animation, right?
Yes, that's correct. So increasing the foot traffic, increasing the attractiveness, also increasing the time spent on site. And something else that is very important for our clients is to learn more about their customers. We can build into these experiences some way to learn more. For example, you spoke about a car configurator. If we let the user choose the color, we can send back that data to the brand, so the brand knows that the red color is the most chosen one, and they can act on this. It can also gather insights and data for the brand.
So in the end, that's why you talk about experiential marketing. It's because on the one hand, it's a question of building an experience and turning that experience into marketing for a brand, but it's also a sales instrument.
Our industry really evolved into something that really needs to be integrated into the marketing strategy, into the global strategy of the clients. It's not just a wow factor anymore. It must be a tool.
So Gimbal Cube is about experiential marketing and building the experiences for the brands to build the brands for the clients. And you were talking about industry, right? Just a moment ago. What's the industry like at the end of the day? Are there many competitors? Are you kind of a one of a kind company? What is the landscape like?
So when we started 12 years ago, there was not many of us. At that time, the skills and capabilities needed to build this kind of experience were pretty rare. But now, as the industry becomes mature, there are a lot of, studios and like freelance that using the tools, the modern tools that are available to us, can build this kind of experience. So we have, our fair bit of competitors. And that's great. That means that the industry is mature and a lot of people can enjoy these experiences. As for the way that we work, we usually also, of course, work a lot with agencies, marketing, production agencies that work with brands. And we also really like to work directly with clients, with industry, with museums as well, directly.
I was saying earlier that you are based in France, but also in Japan and in the US, in LA. Is this an advantage, a positioning advantage, a competitive advantage for the company to have these various places, basically?
Yeah. So the joke is, if I am in Japan, it's to be in the future. So because we are on the first part of the time zones, we didn't intentionally did it, but having a team that is on multiple time zones allows us to work very efficiently. If we get feedback in the US at night, the friends can work on it, and then the next day, the feedback is taken into account. So that's really on the organizational part. France, US, and Japan are really, really different culture, and the landscape of business is also really different. So we have these three perspectives on the industry, and it's really beneficial for us to have this top view of what's happening.
So that gives you a multicultural perspective. We'll come back to that from a team standpoint, but it's interesting in terms of business. On top of that, AI. I know you talk a lot about AI, and you have a newsletter and a podcast on the topic that we'll put the links in the description. AI, is it a topic? Is it, an opportunity topic for you guys, or is it like a kind of a business killer that has to be tackled somehow?
So if you look at devices like this, you see a lot of like brick and mortar here. So it's a hardware, but inside many things are powered by AI, and the recent improvements and developments in AI have drastically improved the quality of these devices. On the hype, I would say, of the technology, maybe you remember 3-4 years ago, there was a lot of hype on the metaverse. So the metaverse is like the end goal of virtual reality, and Facebook renamed Meta and so on. And last year with ChatGPT, the hype was completely stolen, switched to AI. And this year with the release of the Vision Pro, I think there is a connection that will be hopefully made between these two. So AI will help the adoption and the democratization of XR technologies.
Which gives me a very good transition for the second big topic of the discussion. I remember that when we started working together, we did a workshop with the team, and when I asked people, "What do you guys do?" everyone was saying, "We're developers." Okay, what else? Tech. Okay, what else? Developers. So it was kind of a funny moment to have, but the shift from we are developers to we are making experiential marketing is kind of a big one. I'm very interested in understanding how things have been evolving. First question, so we're talking about scaling a company, right? And we tend to say at Impactified that scaling is about turning a business into an asset that's building value progressively, right? The thing can work for the entrepreneurs when the entrepreneurs manage to take some distance and get less involved progressively. So scaling is a question of a formula, which is organization times sales. Times, because it's not organization plus sales, which allows one of them to be zero and still having something. It's times sales, because if one of them is zero, then the whole thing is not an asset. If we start with the organization point, and then we can come back to the sales one, where did you guys get stuck, or feel stuck anyway?
I wasn't a CEO. I was just like a founder who's doing development and is doing invoices and doing cash flow and doing bank transfer. And, the mindset was really heads down into the projects, into the day-to-day, without the capability of like seeing the big picture. So I think for me at least, I was starting to get really worried about that. And working with you is like taking the head and looking at the big picture.
So that was from I was going to say from a CEO perspective, but you are saying from a not yet CEO perspective. How about the company perspective? Why did you feel like there was something to do in calling someone from the outside?
When we started, we were very lucky from word of mouth. We had a lot of clients. So without putting an effort into a sales strategy, we were able to run our business for many, many years. That was the big risk. The company itself wouldn't have been sustainable without a good sales strategy and also a good value proposition. As you are saying, we are dev squad is not a good enough value proposition.
So that meant you were stuck on the CEO side. Okay, fair enough. That happens to a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs. And that's part of the mindset aspect of scaling. But there was also a big stake in terms of positioning and repositioning the business, which also had an impact on the pitching side, obviously, because if you pitch yourself as a dev squad, which is the term you're using, or if you're pitching yourself as an experiential marketing company, the value perceived by a client is not the same.
Yeah. After we starting to work together, we conducted like a few, workshops and studies on the type of projects that we are working on, and the margin, the time we spend on them, and so on and so on. And there was some aha moments, I would say, where some of the project that from the outside perspective, someone could think it's the best kind of projects, really high brand, high budget, but from our side, maybe it's not the best margin and maybe not the most interesting projects. So there was also a readjustment here on the pricing model and on the placement of our business model in a usual like client project process.
Practically speaking, that means revising, for instance, the way you are acting or the moment you are acting in the food chain. For instance, it used to be mostly a question of having some marketing agencies calling you as a dev squad, whereas now you're working a lot more as not a marketing agency yourself, but as an integrated kind of solution where you can suggest and be part of the project from the beginning.
Yeah, that's instead of being at the end of the chain where everything is already done, quote unquote done, and we don't have a lot of value actually, and we don't have a lot of capabilities to showcase our expertise except the technical one, but we also have a deep expertise in innovation, in design of an experience, in how to get data and get metrics from an experience, and this needs to come early in the process of a project.
Is there any thinking in the company in terms of productization?
Yes. So what we also figured out over the past few years is that we have so many projects. We have more than 300 projects over the past 12 years. We realized that some of them could easily be transformed into a product. Easily, quote unquote, easily transformed into a product that really matches the current business situation. Oftentimes we hear that the budgets are low, clients are looking for off-the-shelf solutions. So with this new business model of productization, we say, okay, we have this, this, and this on the shelf. You can change the logo here, you can change sound here, and you're done for a price. Boom.
So there used to be a company with a not yet CEO, and the company was basically selling a dev squad kind of business model, right? And it turned into something where the core is experiential marketing for brands, for customers, with some big thinking on how to not just sell time, but also turn the assets that you have into products, and then turning those products into some kind of a services. So technology as a product, as a service. Is it kind of making sense?
Yes, it does. And of course, we are not forgetting the big, completely custom projects, which are the front at the front page of what we do. But yeah, you correctly summarized. Yeah.
Who used to be your typical client? Who was your ideal client, and where are you on that? Are you getting close to your ideal client?
Our clients were marketing agencies. So that was when we started at the time, like 100% of our clients. We still work with agencies. The persona of client that we work in the agencies has switched a bit. We work more with the innovation teams, with even the CEOs, with the executive teams of agencies. On top of that, the value proposition that we have now is also compelling to brands directly. So when we talk about how to integrate immersive technologies into a strategy, then that is really compelling for the brand, and we can discuss directly with them. So it's evolving, it's in progress, but I see it as being on the right path.
So you mean that before, in the version 1 of Gimbal Cube, there was no persona. So in the end, your own marketing efforts were kind of complicated, or is it that there was no persona, so there was no marketing effort, and we're coming back to the word of mouth point that you were making before, which means people were coming to you and you were not going to them?
Exactly. We didn't work on our persona and our ideal client. People were coming to us. I remember that we tried sometimes to go out, and because we were not prepared, and of course it failed. Now that we have a more compelling message and a more compelling materials and value proposition, then yeah, we get much more traction.
One of the exercises we quite like is the ABC client, which is basically a game where we look at the typology of clients that there are in a company, and then we play with the data, right? In the same way that you are using the data from the experiences you build, we use that data to see, okay, who are the clients? What kind of projects? What is the amount of money charged for that project? How many hours have you spent on that project? And then we come up with KPI, key performance indicators, that tell us that maybe this client is the big one and is generating a big amount of money, but in the end, the profitability on that client is very low because it demands an awful lot of work and blah, 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 blah. Did you come to any interesting conclusions in that regard? And was that a way for you to pivot, change, go to your new market?
Yes, definitely. So we already knew it in a way, but putting these indicators on it was really eye-opening, I would say. The projects were a lot of them, but maybe not that much budget, and as you said exactly, a lot of time spent on them. So it really opens up in two ways, I would say. So one way is the productization of the business model to go to lower budgets but higher repeatability. And also the other way around, reach out to the big projects with high budget. So we are now looking at, 6 months time frame on some of the projects. So there is really a shift in there as well.
When you scale a company, there is a big team aspect, a big team element. As the business is growing, what's on the table for you? What are the challenges?
So we started very organically to increase the size of the team over the past 12 years. And we were all very busy into our daily day-to-day tasks. Switching to a well-organized company raises some issues that we work together on. What is the role of everybody? Their assignments? Do they need to be only informed, or do they need to be decision makers on some topic? We had kind of a blurry area there, and being able to really put names on the role of everyone was really helpful into actually also empowering them into their own role.
How about communication? Is it something that was already efficient? Something that was already a topic?
So we've been remote from the start. It needs effort. A good communication does not automatically appears. So there are an effort that is needed by everyone into communicating efficiently. The personality of each other, being able to know what kind of personality we are, what's of our favorite way of communication, really helped us into improving the way we communicate and avoid hitting walls.
That point about internal communication and the behavior aspect is very, very important, because it's a blind spot. It's something, it's hidden behind the ears and people don't realize it, but whenever they move their head, the topic stays hidden. And unless you actually start putting it in front of their eyes, there is no way they're going to be able to use it. But as soon as you start saying, look at this kind of logic, look at how you think, look at how they think, then the entrepreneurs change, because they feel like, oh, that's something I didn't see coming, and that's something I can leverage. And they leverage it.
Yeah, and especially as you mentioned at the beginning, so we have French culture and American culture mostly, with Asian culture as well. And these are really different communication styles. It's really important to have them in mind.
Scaling is also a matter of finance. What would you say are the stakes?
Let's take the cash flow as a perfect example. I was looking at the cash flow, but only from a technical aspect of it, I would say. So, okay, in 3 months, we will have that amount. Now that I'm looking at it and using it as like a prediction tool, it really puts a highlight on some issues or advantages of some business models. So I was mentioning we are looking, for example, at 6 months project now, but in 6 months, when will we be paid? Is it in 6 months? So how do we finance ourselves between now and 6 months? So it's not only a technical tool; it's also a tool that sheds very good insights on the business model itself.
And what would be the typical traps? If you were talking right now to the Fabien from 3 years ago, where would you put your finger, as in, be careful, that's a trap?
No, wow, there are so many. A bit out of topic, but I think it's a main one, is the sales strategy. Like I would really put the focus on this, and on the finance one. Actually, I will go back to what I was saying before, is taking really a good look at the cash flow, because at the end of the day, if there's no money in the bank, we could have the best technology, we could have the best team. It's not going anywhere.
Back to you as the entrepreneur, one of the entrepreneurs in the team, but as the entrepreneur who's also the CEO, what are the stakes? What have been the stakes over the past few years? The big challenges.
Before starting this whole process, it was kind of comfortable. Being heads down, doing coding every day. It's something that I was doing for 10, 15 years. So something that I'm really used to. So yeah, it's a comfortable position. It wasn't sustainable. And now there we are. Once the head is looking at the big picture, it's less comfortable. The challenges are quite high, but also it's kind of fun, right? Looking at the big picture, the perspectives. So there is a real mindset switch there. That was a challenge. Yeah, definitely.
The point about managing teams, was it easier when you were just a developer and you're talking from geek to geek, and so it's easy to understand each other because you just understand each other? But now that you're stepping up and playing CEO, do you have to communicate differently? Are things happening differently?
Now that we moved from being at the end of the food chain to having an increased scope of work, we need to be able to communicate, of course, technically very efficiently with the team, but also collaborate with them on the bigger picture. Before, maybe having metrics or analytics in an experience was an option that we think at the end is, oh wow, we forgot about the analytics, yet let's put something very quickly. Now, metrics and analytics this is why we are doing marketing projects, right? So communicating that with the team, it's the core of what we are doing. It's just a very simple example, but I hope that highlights the change in just being technical into having a more broader scope.
So you mean the point here is now your job is to explain to the people you work with that the point is not just to develop. You have to explain them that it's to build an asset around their skill.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. The end goal is still, of course, the technical quality, but it's also that the product is a part of an ecosystem, whether an industrial ecosystem or marketing ecosystem, and we need to take that into account so it integrates seamlessly.
I hear a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, CEOs say they can feel alone at the top. Is it a myth or is it reality, and how do you cope with that?
I'd say it's a reality. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's our responsibilities as CEO, to move things, to take the decisions, and to push the company forward. Of course, we are not alone, and I have co-founders and I have a team. Also, like discussing with you is helping. Still looking at the big picture, but having also like a soundboard that helps making these kind of decisions. Yeah.
Did the whole exercise also give you a way to communicate more with the teams, in the sense that the work we are doing together, as in the questioning, the brainstorming, the sounding board side, do you also replicate it with people in your team? Do you have more time for them to just listen and give them some space and some attention?
Oh yeah, now that through all our discussions and taking the head out of the day-to-day, I have much more time, and I don't develop anymore. Maybe, just sometimes for fun, but I have much more time to write, to educate, to discuss with the team. To really focus on strategy, and that's really a game changer. Yeah.
Somehow it's a question of learning how to coach and lead them, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Having been through this change, I can also see how some of them are, getting more experience and getting more responsibilities, and the challenges that come with that.
Is there anything we missed? Something we want to add to this discussion?
Maybe at one point on innovation. So we talk a lot about innovation in technology, but I think there are also innovation in business models. It's also about process and how to innovate on business models and value proposition.
So the best way to scale a company in your case is to build innovation by innovating for yourself.
Yeah, that's a very good summary.
Wow, that's a good one. We should keep this one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Fabien, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It was an interesting discussion and good to be here.